Before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever prayed a prayer and felt like God didn't hear you? Like your words disappeared into silence and nothing ever came back? What if I told you some prayers don't come back right away? Not because God ignored them, but because He's waiting for the perfect moment to answer. Tonight's story is about a man who thought God had forgotten him until one night changed everything. But before we begin, welcome to FaithTold Anew, a place where we bring powerful Christian stories to life. Stories that remind you that God is still working, even when you can't see it. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because every story on this channel is created to strengthen your faith, encourage your spirit, and remind you that your story isn't over yet. Now, let's begin. In a quiet village lived a boy named Daniel. Every night before bed, Daniel knelt beside his bed and prayed the same prayer. Dear God, please use my life for something important. He didn't know exactly what that meant. He just believed that God had a purpose for him. His mother had taught him that God hears every prayer, she would always say, even the ones whispered in the dark. But life doesn't always go the way we imagine. Daniel grew up, dreams faded. Responsibilities piled up, bills, stress, long hours at work. Slowly, something inside him changed. He stopped praying. Not because he hated God, but because he felt like God had gone silent. Years passed. The boy who once prayed every night became a man who barely thought about heaven at all. One evening, Daniel was driving home during a violent storm. Rain pounded the windshield. Lightning tore through the sky. As he drove along a lonely road, he noticed something strange. A small car had slid off the road and crashed into a ditch. The headlights were still on. Daniel hesitated. He was tired. He just wanted to get home. But something inside him whispered, "Stop." He pulled over. Daniel ran through the rain toward the wrecked car. Inside was a young woman, barely conscious. Her seatbelt was jammed. Smoke was beginning to rise from the engine. Daniel pulled with all his strength. Finally, the seatbelt snapped loose. Just seconds later, the engine caught fire. He carried her away from the car as flames swallowed it behind them. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived. The paramedics took the woman away, and Daniel stood there in the rain, shaking. Something felt strange, like the moment meant more than he understood. 2 weeks later, Daniel received a phone call. It was the young woman he had rescued. Her name was Sarah. She asked if she could meet him. When they met at a small cafe, she told him something that left him speechless. Before the accident, she said, "I had been praying." Daniel leaned forward. "Praying for what?" She took a deep breath. "I asked God to save my life because I felt like my purpose wasn't finished yet." She paused, "And then you appeared." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in his mind. "God sent you." For the first time in years, he knelt beside his bed again. But this time he didn't know what to say. Memories flooded back. A little boy praying in the dark. "Dear God, please use my life for something important." Suddenly, Daniel realized something that made his heart pound. Maybe that prayer had never been forgotten. Weeks later, Sarah invited Daniel to her church. He almost didn't go, but something inside him told him to try. The message that morning was simple. The pastor said, "Sometimes we think God ignored our prayers, but in reality, He was preparing us for the moment they would be answered." Daniel felt like the words were meant for him, because years ago he had asked God for a purpose. And on a rainy night, on a lonely road, God had quietly answered. Weeks later, Sarah invited Daniel to her church. He almost didn't go, but something inside him told him to try. The message that morning was simple. Daniel began praying again, not perfectly, not every moment, but sincerely. He discovered something powerful. God does not forget the prayers we pray in faith. Even if years pass, even if we wonder, even if we lose hope, He still hears. And when the moment is right, He answers in ways we never expected. Maybe you once prayed a prayer that feels forgotten. Maybe you asked God for direction, for purpose, for help, and nothing seemed to happen. But here's the truth this story reminds us of: God never wastes a prayer. Some answers arrive quickly, others take years. But heaven remembers every word spoken in faith. And one day, like Daniel, you may discover God was working the entire time. So maybe, just maybe, the prayer you thought was forgotten isn't forgotten at all. Maybe God has been working behind the scenes this entire time, aligning moments, preparing people, setting the stage for something greater than you imagined. Just like Daniel. One day you may look back and realize God didn't ignore your prayer. He answered it at the perfect time. So don't stop praying. Don't lose faith. And don't give up on what God placed in your heart. Because your story is still being written. And the next chapter might change everything. If this story touched you, take a moment to like this video. It helps more people discover messages like this. Share this video with someone who might be losing hope. You never know whose life it could impact. And if you want more powerful, faith-building stories like this, make sure to subscribe to FaithTold Anew and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. Because here, we remind you that God is still moving, still speaking, and still answering prayers. I'll see you in the next story.